My big suggestion to students, particularly through high school, is
you can do anything.
Choose it for you, not for
It is worth
it.
Just focus on the next step.
Doesn't matter what you're doing.
Don't be afraid.
As long as you're doing something.
That is such good advice.
I don't think I could see myself doing
It's
anything
a
else.
challenging life.
Student nights, Wednesday to Saturday.
I worked on that house.
I racked up every single dollar of debt that I
I
possibly
think there's
could.
a lot of pressure on high school.
Yeah,
kids
I just
these days,
love working outside.
And if money is something that you care a lot
In
about.
hindsight,
I've also been a very indecisive
But you
person.
keep looking for roads that have been less
it
travelled.
was just that moment that I knew what I wanted to do. So nothing else is going to change that.
Welcome to the guest speaker.
Right, here we go. Thank you so much for joining us, Steph. We're really excited to have you on the guest speaker. You're another one of our guests who has consistently shown up for students in my classes, answering my annoying emails, and that really speaks volumes about how committed you are to both your study and your profession, as well as supporting young people. So look, a big shout out to you. Thank you so much. And we're really excited for what you're about to share. Your story really background is you graduated Cambridge High in 2015, and back then you had your sights firmly set on a career in architecture. When that first university application didn't go to plan, you made a bold call to take a gap year, a decision that ended up changing everything for the better. That gap year opened the door to a whole new direction, leading you to Auckland University, where you completed a Bachelor of Science, majoring in Nutrition and Food Science, followed by a Master of Health Science in Nutrition and Dietetics. I even had to Google dietetics. Was I even it right? Because it doesn't come off my tongue right. It sounded like I was. So anyway, Google says it's a high level of application of nutritional science to promote health, prevent disease, and treat medical conditions through personalised diet and education. So that's what you're trained in. Currently, there are 856 practicing in this field, but also it's on New Zealand's immigration green card list due to the shortage. Alongside this study, you were also working as a group fitness instructor, something you said your high school self would never have recognised or been interested in. So growth has happened. You're now a registered dietitian working here in Aotearoa for Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand. You spent 3 years in counties Manukau supporting people with kidney disease, may have included young people, we'll talk about that, and those pursuing bariatric surgery. And last year you made the move to Auckland Hospital, where you're now working in the diabetes area, doing work that is genuinely changing lives, I am sure. What makes your journey especially relevant is that we have had so many students right now exploring alternatives to the medical degree, but still wanting a health focus. Many of them are passionate athletes, sports-focused students, and your career in food and nutrition is a path I think is going to absolutely resonate. And I didn't know much about it until one kid in my class said they wanted it, you popped up, and you were gold. So thank you for being here. And we always do this. I just want to take you back to school. So we know eventually you're going to be in a hospital doing your work, and we're going to talk about that. But how did you find school? What subjects really resonated with you, and can you recommend for any kids sitting there going, I'm going to pursue this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I loved school. I was and am a nerd at heart. I loved learning. I would say I did quite well when I was in school, but my subjects did not align that well with my future career because, of course, I thought I was going to be the next big architect. So I did year 13, I did calculus and physics because I thought they were going to help with my architecture dream. And I did drama, English, and graphics. And so if I could have gone back knowing where I was now, I would have done chemistry, I would have done biology, I would have done health. I still would have done my other fun subjects as well on the side, but gosh, I would have done things so differently. But at the end of the day, it didn't impact me too much, which was good.
Well, and that's a good message. So you're saying in the end, if someone was, got too infatuated with there is a right subject, maybe that's not the right thing. You enjoyed school, you did well, and it served you well in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think I still had that, that commitment to studying and putting in the effort, which meant that when I went to uni, I still had those skills. I just had to do a little bit of extra work in the beginning.
Cool. So can you tell me this transition, when you were sitting there in year 13 going, where am I going? What am I doing? We mentioned, we don't often have these insights. You thought architecture. Why? And what went wrong? Because, I would have thought you would have got in, but how did that work? And what were you thinking? And where did you get help for these things, like in that period of your life?
Yeah, good question. How I decided I was going to be an architect, I don't really know. I loved doing graphics when I was at school and discovered that I really liked, technical drawings and design when I was at school. My dad worked in building, and so I knew a little bit more about that side, and somehow I put the two things together and decided I was going to be an architect. And I didn't really decide that off of anything else. I didn't talk to any career advisors. I think I went to one day where people from, I think it might have been different unis, or it might have just been Auckland Uni. They came to school, they set up in the hall, they talked a bit about uni. Did I talk to anybody about architecture? I don't think so. I didn't talk with anybody who was an architect. So I don't really know where I got the career idea from, but I was like, yeah, I'm passionate about it. I'm going to be an architect. And then I put my portfolio together for one university. I submitted my portfolio the day before. And then I found out I'm pretty sure it was Christmas Eve of 2015 that I didn't get accepted. And my world, it crumbled because I was like, it's the only thing I want to do. And now what am I going to do with my life? And I had a bit of an existential crisis. Turns out, didn't matter. Wasn't going to be an architect anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would ask you about the portfolio, but I'm not, because we've actually got a couple of architects coming on. So we'll learn about what it takes to get into architecture school another day. So yeah, so so you actually took a whole gap year the following year?
Yeah, so I had a whole year off because I basically decided when I didn't get in, I was like, no, I'm just going to try again next year. I'll take a year. I'll work on my portfolio because it just needed different things than what I put in there. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a good go and then I'll get in the year after. And so then I was kind of like, what do I do? I wasn't at that point looking back at it. I wasn't ready to leave home and I wasn't ready to go to uni. So I stayed at home for that next year and I worked a couple part-time jobs that gave me quite a good amount of hours. And I did something really weird in that year for me, which was that I joined a gym. Partly because my parents were like, Steph, you're going to work and then you're just home a lot. You should do something else. And I was like, you're probably right. So I decided I was going to start my fitness journey. And that was the changing point for me because I got really into fitness and I went, I could do something with this. And I talked with a lot of people who went to the gym. I talked with personal trainers and I had people suggesting, physio or personal training. And it was my dad who actually went, what about nutrition? And I was like, I hadn't really even thought about that before. And I looked into it and I was like, well, that's for me. My passion had always been in science. I didn't recognize it at the time, but my mum was always like, you're great at science. You should do something science orientated. And I sort of looked more into nutrition and I was like, it's putting together all these things I'm really interested in. And then that was it.
Yeah. You can only but think if you got into architecture, what would that story have been? I mean, you would have gone, you would have started, but geez, it would have been a sliding door moment in your life even, eh? So that's really cool.
Would I finish the degree? I don't know.
Yeah. So, how did that transition? Not really ready to leave home. Talk us through that, because a lot of kids they need to acknowledge it is a big decision to leave home. So you went to Auckland. Where did you stay? How did you pay for it? And how emotionally did you find studying there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I stayed in my first year of study. I stayed at a halls of residence. Best decision. Obviously, a more expensive decision, but I was really fortunate in that my parents paid for that for me. They paid for that first year of accommodation. So that wasn't something that I had to, worry about and have the burden of. So that was really good. And it was incredible. And it worked really well for me because I initially applied to go into a traditional hall where you're in your own room and you've got your shared bathroom, shared kitchen. I actually got accepted into a sort of a new hall that had opened up for first year students, which would kind of converted from a second, third year hall in which we were in kind of apartments. And so we had our own separate rooms, but we had a shared living area, own bathroom, own kitchen, but then we were still fed in like the main hall. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, but I had a core group of 5 of us that were in that little apartment building, and we became such close friends. And it was such a fantastic year of uni because I had like my own little family in Auckland, which was it worked really well for me.
Okay, wicked.
Yeah.
So how did you hit the ground first year study, maybe going up towards your majors at the top? How was first year? Can kids expect to learn? Is it pretty much going back to biology at school? Not that you knew because you hadn't been doing it, but yeah, what was that like?
First year was really hard. First year was really hard because for a Bachelor of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics, your first year, I know they've changed a few things now, but your first year is just a pre-med year. So I was with all the students trying to become doctors, and that was really intense because we had labs and assignments, and there were all these people, and they were aiming for, A pluses, and there was me going, I know I don't want to be a doctor, but I've got so much pressure on me. Well, I felt like I had so much pressure on me, and I was having to sort of go back, people who'd done biology, people who'd done chemistry year 13, they found a lot of the papers at least had quite a good amount of background knowledge, whereas for me, I was learning a lot of things from scratch. And I wasn't doing as well as I had done. Like I was an excellent student in school, getting some A minuses, some B pluses, some Bs, some B minuses. I'm pretty sure I failed my first lab that I ever did at uni. And I was like, oh gosh, this isn't going to go well. And it took me probably that first semester to just kind of figure out how uni worked, because it's really different to school. And then by my second semester, I was starting to pick things up a bit more. And then come my second year and my third year, I'd now had all that background knowledge from my first year. So I was at the same level as everyone else. And I really took it in my stride, and grades improved. And yeah.
Yeah. So can I ask, are you under the same pressure at first year? Because I've promoted it as maybe you don't want to go into medicine. Is there that same cutoff, or are you largely allowed to get Bs and be okay because your degree's going this way? Am I right?
Oh yeah, you could get like C minuses. It really, that first year, your grades don't matter. Your grades matter a bit to get into masters, but that's more your like second year, third year grades. So that first year, you really don't have to count, or you don't have to weigh it too much. And I think it's more just going, if you do go into that degree, look, you're going to have these people who are working really, really hard because they have to get A pluses because they want to become doctors. So you can use that to your advantage because you can be in study groups with them and you can learn from them, but you don't have to have that same pressure of excelling because not everyone's going to.
No. Can you tell me the types of topics and concepts you learned about? I'm presuming, food and vitamins, minerals, the body, can you give us, because in the end you become an expert at taking someone's health journey and being able to guide them. Yeah, what did you learn about?
Yeah, so bachelor's and master's, 2 very separate types of learning, and the nutrition side of things actually didn't really come until the master's. So bachelor's degree was a lot of like physiology, human anatomy, biology. It was a lot of medical science. It included like interpreting pathology slides of different diseases. It talked a lot about population health, so looking at how we can promote health and health statistics in the country. What else did I do? Yeah, I did a few like random ones, like I did a marketing paper because I had to pick something else. But a lot of it was very biology, very medical. And then by the time you get into your master's, that's where you're going through different diseases and nutrition requirements and all of the things that actually form your work as a dietitian. So if I had gone to uni and I just wanted to stop and have a nutrition degree, all I can say is Auckland University wouldn't be the place that I would necessarily go for that, because I think you can learn those skills better elsewhere. But to become a dietitian, it's the best foundation, because you're learning a lot about the body and how the body's going to react when you then start to apply your nutrition side of things.
Do doctors, you might not know, but I'm just interested, do doctors learn those dietitian things? In other words, are they taught about health, or are they just taught about consequences and the drugs they might want to give you to solve a problem? Because I'm thinking a lot of what you do, you could eliminate a lot of them if someone was just open and honest about someone's journey with health and the food they ate. Do you know if they learn that stuff?
So I know that in a medicine degree, I'm pretty sure they get like one day or part of a day lecture on nutrition, and that's all they get. And then the rest of theirs is, all the other things that a doctor has to do, which, lots of stuff. So from their side of things, that's where we really come in, because we've got such a specialist area of knowledge. We do 5 years of training to build up that knowledge, plus all of the extra learning that we do when we actually start working. And it's really fascinating, because there's a lot of things. I'm not calling myself a doctor. I couldn't be a doctor. I don't have the dedication for it. But there's a lot of things that as dietitians you can start to do that doctors can do. Like, I could start to recognize some possible diagnoses of different conditions, and I can prescribe some certain medications. So there is some crossover. But yeah, it's really fascinating. It's why the two professions work quite nicely hand in hand, because they are doing obviously a lot of the medication disease management, but we're looking at a whole other side of how that disease can get managed as well.
Yeah. Are they referring to you? So I walk in morbidly obese, possibly a diabetic. They start me on a drug regime maybe, or whatever, but I could be referred to you because I need extra help. Is that a relationship?
Absolutely. So my work that I currently do, we're very collaborative. So a doctor or a nurse, whether that's a doctor in our service or a GP, will say, hey, look, this person, we've got all these medications, but things don't seem to really be coming together. Their diabetes is still maybe wildly out of control. Can you help with that? So they'll come to see us and we'll go, look, you've talked about your medications, but for diabetes specifically, there's this triad of medications, exercise, and diet. And those three things together help someone to manage their diabetes. So diet and exercise is the part that we really come into to help form that overall kind of well-rounded care.
Okay. And sorry, I've probably jumped a long way because I've jumped right into your job. So you finish your master's. What options are there? I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about your path you apply for, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, what are the options? So kids sitting there going, I get your degree. I love health. I love all this nutrition stuff. Where can they go just on that first?
Yeah. Yep. So I guess the big one in New Zealand, and the main area that a lot of people start off with, is clinical or medical nutrition therapy. And so that's going into hospitals or going into private practice. Some people jump straight into either an established private practice or their own private practice. So that's a key area where most dietitians would work in. Some people go into like sports dietetics. There are some dietitians that, support athletes that go to the Olympics. So that's pretty cool. A bit more niche. There are people that go into private companies, food companies, or health promotion agencies, and they do a lot of the background work around, like there's places like Sport Auckland, Celiac NZ, Beef and Lamb, like Sanitarium. There's dietitians that all sit behind there doing a lot of analysis of products that are coming out, consumer feedback. What else? There's people working for like government. I couldn't talk too much on that because I don't know much about it. But yeah, there's lots of different areas. It's not just clinical. There's so many places you can go.
Shit, if I had my time again, this sounds wicked, eh, Grace? Like, I really like, the med thing I wouldn't have been good enough, but this is cool. So your own personal journey then, where was your head at? You finish your master's. Yeah, how does that employment thing so people can learn? And what, pressures, strains, how have you found working in this industry? Because you're dealing not always with good either. So there's a bit of mental stress there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I knew before I actually started dietetics, when I learnt what a dietitian was, which was during my second year of uni, in my mind, that was where I wanted to get with my nutrition degree. So I knew I wanted to help people in whatever capacity that looked like. And so when I had done my placements during my master's, I knew that I wanted to start my career in a hospital and in a public hospital, because you just get a lot of support there from a lot of very experienced dietitians. So it really helps with that learning and upskilling at the beginning. So I knew, yep, I wanted to be at a hospital. I had my final placement when I was at uni in Counties Manukau in their renal kidney department. And I was like, if I could get any job, that's the job that I'd want to get when I finish. And so there's a bit of a process of waiting for your registration and things once you hand in your final thesis. But I had a job interview for a job that had just come up at Counties in the renal department. It was the only job I applied for, it was the only job I interviewed for, and I got my job before I was actually officially registered. So they waited for me to start, which was incredible and very fortunate. And I was very lucky at the time, because jobs come and go. Jobs especially come and go at the moment with the current situation with our health, but I won't delve into that too much. But there are jobs you just have to sometimes wait for them to come up. So I was quite lucky in that it was 2022. A lot of people had been working for a few years and they wanted to go overseas. So there were a few vacancies that were coming up. So I started in renal in Counties, absolutely loved it, had just the most supportive team, had tons of learning, and it was there for 2 years before I added on the bariatric surgery side of things, because someone left and that opportunity came up and I was the only one in that position. So that was a really good challenge for me. And then it was kind of come the end of that 3-year point that I was there, and there were kind of a few things. It was a very, I guess, a big commute that I was having every day, because I lived more towards central West Auckland and I was driving down south every day, and I was driving an hour 15 home sometimes, and it actually started to impact me mentally a lot more than I thought it was. And also my job, there's lots of ups and downs when you work in a public health system. There's lots of staffing changes, and with that, in the time that I was there, from the time I started to the time I finished, I became the person who'd been in the team the longest and was the most experienced in my team. And that was quite a lot of expectation. It was quite a lot of pressure I put on myself, because I like to do everything. But I got to the point that my husband as well recognized I was complaining about my job a bit more often, and complaining about the commute. And so we both kind of went, I think it's time for a change. So that's where the sort of change component went. I was like, I'm ready to try a new clinical area. I'm ready to try a new hospital, which was a fantastic shift. But there's lots of ups and downs in the job. In the renal area in particular, I was working a lot with people who had an end stage condition, meaning, it's not going to improve. Life expectancy is a bit variable, 2 to 5 years for a lot of people. So there's a lot that you go through with people. There was a lot of really hard conversations that I had with people. I say that I'm a dietitian, but dietitians work as counselors, as friends, as support workers. So a lot of the time, well, not a lot of the time, but sometimes I don't even talk to people about their eating, because there's something else much more important for us to talk through. But of course, that stuff weighs on you. Sometimes you take that home with you and you've got to try to separate yourself from it, and then you'll get that with lots of health jobs as well. But yeah, there's lots of peaks and troughs and changes that you go through.
So I think you answered one of my questions around being, if you're good at this job, you must have a good way of articulating things, speaking in a way they can understand, because I imagine you bring in all your master's study, you're going to lose them. You've got to persuade. You sort of got to, come on, there's an element of that. Obviously, your knowledge is important. That's the technical side. And then you said the counsellor, which I had already written down, that at some point you maybe go, well, the food ain't going to save you anyway. I need to lead you. Yeah. But that must be really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's certain personality types that seem to be drawn to the degree. I'd say a lot of dietitians are like type A personality, very, organized, quite driven, quite outspoken people, sometimes a little stubborn, but that makes it all part of the fun. But also people who, I guess, like to have a chat. Our consults are generally quite long, sometimes up to an hour, which is more than you'd get for a lot of other professions. So like to chat, like to just talk to people and get to know them, and show a lot of empathy and compassion towards people. Because at the end of the day, if we're talking about food, there's a lot that goes into what people eat besides just what they like to have. It's culture, it's tradition, it's things that bring people together, is trauma that goes behind what people eat. And so there's a lot of that stuff that you're breaking down as well, which I'll say makes it a really fascinating part of the role, but also sometimes makes it a bit of a heavy part of the role as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Can you give me some wins where you've been able to take even examples of people in a state, go through those skills I said about your persuasion, your way of explaining, your engaging personality, and get a win? Like, does it happen?
Yeah. It happens sometimes. It happens sometimes without you knowing, but I had a time recently where somebody came in, it was in my diabetes service, and she was this lovely lady. And the first time I saw her, a big thing with diabetes is a lot of people don't understand what it is when they're diagnosed with it, even if they've had it for 20 years. And sometimes they don't know how to take care of certain parts of it. So this lady was getting lots of low blood sugar levels, which is very dangerous because you can die from that. And in amongst that as well, she had a few things with her eating. And so we talked about little tweaks that she could make. And we also talked about how to safely bring up her blood sugars when they're low to make sure that she was going to keep herself nice and safe. And then I saw her, I think it was a couple of months later, and she talked through all the things that she'd kind of changed since our last appointment, especially around her treating her low blood sugar levels. And at one point during the consult, it was very sweet because she just said, I really like talking to you because I feel like you're actually looking at me and you're actually listening to me, and I'm actually getting a lot of information and help from you, but I feel like you care about me. And not many people will tell me to wear. I've had a few people that'll make comments, but not many people will say that because they're in the appointment. But it's those little moments that you're like, it makes you feel really good, because it might be something small and it might be something really routine that I do for a lot of patients, but I'm really helping them. And if I can make them feel seen in the health system, because sometimes, I know I've gone to appointments for different things, and sometimes you just feel like you're getting talked at and maybe you don't agree with everything. And so to kind of have that feedback of someone going, no, I actually feel like you're really there for me, I don't know, it's very special.
Don't worry, mate, I'm a teacher. I know what this is like.
Yeah.
Supposed to get a few stories people might resonate with. One of them I'm going to go back to your bariatric stuff. Now, that is the tie to lose weight. Now, can you hear rumors around that concept that, someone arrives, they're not big enough yet? There's a rumor I hear. And so it's almost like they go home, they try and put on a bit more weight so they can reach it. And then once they reach that weight, then they have to prove they can lose some weight. And can you, because people might know the story, what I'm talking about, can you explain that to us, the bariatric stuff?
Yeah, so bariatric surgery, I'll say it's a fascinating area. So bariatric surgery, there's a few different types. So they either surgically remove a part of your stomach, or they sort of bypass your entire stomach, basically. So with that comes a lot of complications. But yeah, in the public health service, we have quite a strict criteria of who we see for bariatric surgery. So there'd be some people who could get the surgery in private, but they might not be able to get it in public because possibly their weight's not big enough. But yeah, absolutely. We see people, or when I was working there, we saw people that come in that we still use BMI, although don't get me started on BMI. The BMI is rubbish. But they'll come in with a particular BMI, and they'll go through a whole series of one-on-one and group sessions beforehand that talk a lot around healthy eating behaviors. before they even get to surgery. But I'll say that the whole sort of process, the whole way that they get to bariatric surgery has changed a lot to how people would traditionally think about it, because it used to be you had to lose a certain amount of weight and you had to do this and that, whereas now we go, the weight is the weight. Weight is a really hard thing to lose. Sometimes it's a really hard thing to gain, and it's not fair for us to use that. And we're trying to move away from the health system being very focused on weight, and instead we go, there are certain behaviours that we'd love to see before. Like, I can't tell you the amount of people who I would see before surgery who'd be like, I'm not a breakfast person. I've never eaten breakfast. It's not for me. And then we go, okay, well, that's actually really important after the surgery, and we do need you to start having it. And then a lot of people start having it and they're like, whoa, I feel so much better during the day. And it was actually like really hard at the beginning, but then I was able to do it and I feel a lot better. So it's more that sort of behavior change beforehand. But yeah, such a fascinating area, somewhere I'd love to go back to one day. And just nutritionally, there's lots of I'd say if they're very science-minded people, it's a great place to go to, because there's changes with, food absorption, and there's lots of technicalities around vitamins and minerals and deficiencies. So yeah, it's just awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered the question.
No, it does. It does. What about intricate things with kids? I'm going to say kids like anorexia and that. Are you dealing with maybe some of those more, I'm going to say psychological, I could be saying the wrong thing, but you're dealing with that? And
oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't get as much in the way of anorexia. That would fall under a different service, more of our specialist eating disorder dietitians, but definitely a lot of very overt eating disorders like binge eating, or what we wouldn't necessarily classify as an eating disorder, but we would call disordered eating, which might be particular diets or things that we wouldn't necessarily recommend. And you see them throughout everywhere. I saw them a lot in bariatric surgery, particularly different diets and ways that people had eaten before they even came into our service, and us trying to bring them away from some of those things, but also a lot in diabetes as well, because there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of very odd, strange patterns of eating. And so a lot of that, you've got to come back to it and try and understand why someone is doing that and how we might be able to move them away from that.
It's to jump in here, I think, and I might have got it, I can't remember what, it was one of the guest speakers in a different discipline, but we talked about how in certain areas, like someone can say they're a therapist or a psychologist, I'm getting it wrong, but they're not. And I feel like obviously social media has contributed, but to that topic of disordered eating or misinformation, you must have to battle a lot with explaining to people that no, what they saw from the influencer is not real, because they have the GLP, like who knows, all these other things, but the authority that people can obtain online and then spread misinformation must be quite a constant battle that you would have to face.
It's a massive challenge. I guess some examples from when I worked in renal, since I was there for so long, there was and still is a miracle potion, which is blueberry juice. And the blueberry juice is meant to cure you of kidney disease. Now it's complete and utter rubbish. And we've battled for so long. People have gone to the companies that sell it and have made them change advertising like it's been that bad. But so many of our people have spent so much of their money because they may not have a great level of understanding around, companies and this false advertising that they're doing, and get pulled into all of these just absolutely atrocious fads or miracle cures. So yeah, gosh, it's a lot of, for us, it's a lot of trying to not just be like, no, you're wrong, that's incorrect, but it's us breaking down, this is the evidence behind why you may or may not use this. And for us, it's a lot of harm versus benefit. So if someone's taking something that maybe is a little bit weird and there's no evidence behind it, but it's not doing them any harm, then all we can do is explain that it's not necessarily going to change anything, but if they would like to spend their money on it, they can. So it's a lot of that negotiation that comes behind it.
negotiation part, that must feed into the EQ, like that. And I feel like it's been riddled throughout this whole conversation of like how much emotional, because you're dealing with very sensitive things. And like that woman, how touching that she said, I feel like you're listening, because there are biases based on how people look, their size, their this, and how serious they're taken in the medical industry. So what a special moment that was, where she let you know like how impactful you're being.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just those really special moments, and it's us as a health professional, like everyone's going to come with their own different background, and you're going to come with your own different biases, and you've got to challenge your own biases as well. But just recognize that they're sitting there and not let that influence the care that you're giving the person who's sitting in front of you.
Can I ask, Steph, what's your day-to-day work look like? So a person saying, I'm going to follow your footsteps. What's the day like? Get up.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Wake up in the morning, have a shower. So I work full time. So I work a 40-hour week, Monday to Friday. That changes a little bit depending on what clinical area you're in. But for diabetes, I work 7:30 till 4. The nice thing with dietitians is usually you do get a little bit of flexibility with your hours. So if you want to start a bit earlier or a bit later, it's pretty easy to do that. But my current working things are probably going to change hopefully a lot in our service in the future. But I do clinics Monday to Friday. So I see patients for half a day in the morning between generally 8:30 to 12:30. And then I do admin, writing letters, project work to develop our service or develop my own learning, meetings with our team to talk about new changes, new structures, provide each other learning from, doctors and nurses. So a lot of that stuff happens in the afternoon. Wednesdays, we have team meetings where everyone comes together and we have people come in and talk about the latest research and things. So yeah, it's a lot of patient-facing work at the moment. It's about 50-50. It's not always like that. So when I worked in renal, there was probably a little bit more of the admin project work that came around in the background. But here it's, more of a 50-50 mix. So it's quite nice to still get to kind of see people and chat to people. Some days you might go, I'm feeling a bit tired today, but you push through. And then you've got that time at the end of the day to kind of catch up on things. So it's quite a nice balance. It can be quite busy, particularly the more years you've worked and the more responsibility you pick up. I'll say it's not a job that you would do where you'd get to the end of the day and be like, I've ticked off all my tasks for the day. There's always extra tasks to do, but it's all part of the fun.
And how do you manage your work-life balance? Because we talked earlier about the stress and the emotional connection with patients and all the rest of it. How are you managing all of this?
Yeah, I'll say it really helped when I moved because I've got more time to myself at the start and at the end of the day. So that's been really wonderful. I think I've got a stance. I think it's quite a Gen Z stance of I've got my work hours that I'm paid for, and outside of those hours, that's my time. And I try and leave my work. Very occasionally do work outside of my work hours, but I try and leave my work at my workplace and come home. And then when I'm home, I love going to the gym, so I or doing some sort of exercise. So that's a big de-stressing for me, particularly if I've had a bit of a tough day. And I'll make sure that I've got time to spend with my husband. I quite often go back down to Cambridge to go see my family there in the weekends, or I catch up with friends here. I've got lots of hobbies, lots of crafting that I like to do. So I try and just make sure that I'm putting that time into doing those other things that fill my cup outside of a job, and make sure that when I go back to work the next week or the next day, I'm feeling that bit refreshed again.
Is your own diet important, or are you like a builder with a background?
My husband bought me an apron last year that says, "Dietitian, eat what I say, not what I eat." I think that's quite accurate. I would say I'm a very realistic dietitian. I'm not necessarily always going to practice what I preach, but at the same time, the information that I'm giving is to people with particular medical conditions, and they don't necessarily apply to my life if I don't have that same background. look, I could definitely do things with my eating that would be more nutritional, more balanced, but you're also allowed to enjoy yummy foods. So I just go, look, I just have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, looking after my own health. But in no way do I have a perfect diet at all.
I've got to ask this because I'm just curious. Has a customer ever gone, well, it's okay for you because you're not you're not big. Have you ever got that?
I've had it. I haven't necessarily had that. When I worked in bariatrics, I had a lot of comments about my physical appearance, which was quite confronting, particularly people being like, well, what do you eat? And what do you do for exercise? Because I want to look like you. And then I'd go, oh, okay, well, where's that come from? So I've gotten a lot of that. I've had a few people that have challenged me a little bit in terms of them going, I don't have that lived experience that they have. And I go, absolutely, I can't relate to you because I haven't lived in your shoes. I haven't lived with that condition. But I haven't really had anybody go, oh, well, I can't have that, you can. People tend to, they don't tend to criticize my eating. But I try and, I relate to people. If someone's going to tell me that they've gone out for Nando's before to have dinner, I mean, I love Nando's. I'm going to ask them what they got from the menu and ask if they've got peri-peri chips because they're great. So I try and show people that at the end of the day, we're all human. Nobody's perfect, but there's a few things that for them in particular, we might need to look at purely because of the medical condition. And that doesn't tend to come with any pushback in terms of them comparing themselves to me.
Okay. I got one more. Diet in terms of people aging, whether they're male and maybe changing testosterone levels or female going through menopause or perimenopause, all of that seems to be something, I don't know whether it's on my Google search, it's not, but you start to see a lot of it, is that a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Nutritional needs changed over our entire life. And I think that the really tricky thing is a lot of people tend to get themselves in eating habits that they've got in childhood, in early adulthood, and then they maintain that for the rest of their lives, but they're in a different body. Things have changed, their hormones have changed, activities changed, maybe they've had kids along the way or a health conditions come up. And so things do need to change a little bit over our lives. And particularly as we start to get older, we really need to be looking at what's going to maintain, your muscles and keep you feeling energized and when you get older, try to keep some fat on you because that's what stops you from breaking your bones when you fall over, which for some people is really hard because they love to eat veggies and we go, okay, well, you actually need to eat a bit more of your fats. So yeah, absolutely. Things change over their whole life. And we've got dietitians who work from people from the point that they're a baby to the point that they are in palliative care. And I think that's a really special part of the job because you can kind of identify which part of the life stage you're most fascinated in. Because for myself personally, I initially thought it was pediatrics, working with kids. And then I sort of went, no, I actually don't think that area's for me. I prefer adults a bit more for lots of different reasons. But I quite like to have adults that are in their, I don't know, I guess 20 to 70-year range, they're still quite active doing lots of things. They've got family, whatever it might be. But I find that a really interesting area to work in. So yeah, lots of fun, different things you got to think of for different people.
Yeah, cool. The future for you, you mentioned private practice where it might be more just people with money coming because they want to look better and they already look good. I can imagine there's some high-end, it'd be quite a good industry. Is there something on your radar? Where do you see yourself going? What opportunities or things do you maybe want in your future?
I'll say I'm definitely still figuring it out, but I've got lots of ideas. In terms of, I guess, the monetary side of things, I will say the one thing is that we had a huge pay increase that came a few years ago, which now means that working in public and working in some private practices are a lot more similar in terms of the amount of money that you can make. So that's quite nice because then you can have the opportunity to help people who can't necessarily afford to pay for private. So that's quite special. In saying that, I will inevitably, I think, go into private, but I want to do that at a point where I feel like I really know my stuff. I've really leached as much knowledge and tips and strategies from the people around me, basically, to feel like I'm kind of at that level. And I don't know when that point necessarily will be, but another area, and I don't know how I'm going to get myself into it, but I'm going to try and figure it out, is I really want to try and get more nutrition education into schools, because we can fix a lot of things that happen later in life if we just provide a lot of that nutrition education early, and in particular cooking skills. And if I could have gone back to school and done food tech, I honestly think that it's such a great area to go, because I don't like the amount of people that I meet who don't have very basic cooking skills is massive. And I think that we don't put enough emphasis on it in the education system. So yeah, that's somewhere that I want to get to, and I don't know what that would look like, and I don't know how to do it, but hopefully one day that's where I'll be.
I'm sure those school lunches are nutritionally balanced from what I can see. Can I ask, what sort of income are we talking about, even if it's ballpark?
I'm very honest.
Oh,
You could look up my income online, being public. So I'm 3.5 years in. So currently I am on about 104,000 annually.
Yep.
Before tax and everything. It's pretty incredible. When I started working back in 2022, I think I started on about 62,000 a year. Now you might think, oh gosh, that's a huge dramatic jump. How the heck do you go up by like $40,000? But it's because we had this huge pay equity claim to basically go, women often work in health and they've been underpaid for years and years and years. So now when you start off as a dietitian, that number I couldn't give you 100% because I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty sure it's around 90,000.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's a pretty good job to go into. And then of course, if you go into private, you've got the opportunity of making heaps more than that. But the nice thing as well is the amount that you earn in New Zealand now is pretty similar to what you earn overseas. We used to be a bit behind, which is why a lot of people did go overseas, particularly to the UK. I think Australia is still a little ahead of us, but the UK is basically the same. So that's pretty nice as well to go, we're actually getting it pretty good in New Zealand.
You could also go private and work 3 days a week to maintain
absolutely.
Kids and all the rest of it, which is quite an incentive.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's your message to kids? They've listened to this, and I tell you what, this has been fantastic. Message to kids at school, obviously don't go to architecture school and do those subjects. So your first thing would be probably play with some of the sciences. Not compulsory, but get involved. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And obviously, though, there has to be this interest in health and well-being. You don't have to be a New Zealand athlete. You don't have, like you just suddenly enjoyed taking care of yourself. And with that was the nutritional, but there's nothing special they have to do.
No, absolutely not. I'd say the main thing is it's keeping your options open at school. So even trying to keep one of the sciences in there, I think is really beneficial. And keeping one of the maths in there, like if you can keep statistics in there, statistics is a really fantastic background high school degree for a lot of university degrees. So I think that's really helpful because I also didn't do stats, so I didn't have that when I did my stats papers. But I think the main thing is if you've got some sort of interest in health or food or science or a combination, then this could potentially be a really nice area to go. If you've thought to yourself, doctor sounded really interesting, but that doesn't sound like it's actually for me, or if you think initially, yeah, I want to be a doctor, and then you maybe don't get in, or you go, no, actually, I don't think that's for me, this is a really nice health alternative to that because there's still a lot of research involved. There's a lot of prescribing and medical therapy involved as well. So that's, yeah. And if you like chatting with people, overall, you're kind of ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, yeah. See, I'm going to make a suggestion to you, Grace, since you're probably going to study for the rest of your life. I'm going sports psychology / nutritionist. Like, you'd be gold.
Well, Ludlam knows every time we talk, I'm like, not every time, but this one, I'm like, that's could be me. Because you're painted such a beautiful picture. And even in my short stint, it's like I was doing athletics in the States, and we had a dietitian. No, not a dietitian and nutritionist. I feel like she wasn't that master's level. But I remember her explaining, because we would like get our calories in, rowers, but she just explained that the order in which we would get them, because most people didn't want to have them before practice because you feel kind of weird. So we were all eating heaps in the evening and then sleeping on it. And she's like, no wonder you're not feeling good during the day. Like you explained, let's rearrange it, because we're thinking, oh, we're eating our macros, we're getting our protein, like we're doing it. And then just those little differences. So I personally have experienced it, like the benefits it can make in the day-to-day. So I just think anyone listening who's slightly interested in this field, you've just painted such a beautiful but truthful like account of it, and having the experience you've had in different areas. I know I have a sign-off question, but before that, is there anything we didn't say or didn't ask you that you think we should have that might be relevant?
Is there anything? I think nothing that I can think of. I think probably the only thing that I would add to that based on what you've just said is, I think if you're looking for a job that's like a practical job where you can see an end result and you can see an immediate effect and a long-term effect, like this is such a fantastic profession for that. Really, yeah.
That's such a great way to put it, the short and long term, because you feel that energy systems like immediately, but then the long term, like once I discovered that, and this could be misinformation, that you have until like 30 to really get your bone density up. I don't know if that's accurate, but then my sister works at Frontera and she was telling me it, and I was like, oh my gosh, at the time I think I was 22, 23, I was like, I've got 8 years to load up the bones. But thinking about when I'm a grandma, hopefully someday long into the future. So that's awesome. Last question. If you could go back to year 12 or 13, Steph, so you to you, because you've given lots of advice to everyone else, but what advice would you specifically give yourself?
I think at that time, I'd probably tell myself to stop putting so much pressure on myself and trying to figure things out right now, knowing what I know now, because I am a planner. I always think I can plan 5, 10 steps ahead and it's going to go in that order, and it doesn't. So I think it's going, look, life's going to change in lots of different ways. You've got to go with the flow. You've got to be open to anything, because anything could change in a minute, in an hour, in a year. And it's all about just exploring different things, because you never know what you might find on the way.
Yeah. Now, Wiki, you've been sensational, Steph. Like I say, I just want to thank you again for all the times you came in. There were kids who obviously were really thinking about your studies at the time, and the fact you spent time with them was really cool. The personality, Grace, is just gold. Like, we've had so many guests, and I've said if I have either that or I want you standing over my bed. And I think we had a nurse, Maya Dunsmore, and I was like, "Go, if I'm in hospital, you're the one." So when I pile on the beef, or I have kidneys failure or something, I'm coming to you.
Come see me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. A real pleasure and a privilege to have you on. And just keep doing what you're doing. It's wicked.
Thank you. It's been a really great opportunity. I think people don't know about our profession enough, so this is a really awesome opportunity to have been able to share that. So thank you both.